AI will learn from us. I call it raising Superman. It's not the code that we write that teaches AI, it's the data that is fed to them. In just a few years, the breakthrough of intelligence will enable us to create anything, literally anything, out of thin air. Most of the challenges that humanity faces today are just a limitation on intelligence. Give me enough intelligence and I'll solve climate change. It's really not that complicated, and it might be something that is much simpler than we think. And we're on that cusp of becoming so intelligent by augmenting our intelligence with the machines that we can get there. So absolutely nothing wrong with AI. There is a lot wrong with our value set, what we built the human system on in the age of the rise of the machines.
Let's assume that's how everything is going to play out, where the digital world will not just be something that improves our lives, but it will be an earth of its own that we build our lives upon. As we maybe navigate and transition to that world, how do we make sure that the world doesn't become Orwellian, so to speak, and we retain some of the best aspects of our world as we know it?
We will go through a dystopia before we go to a utopia, and both are almost 100% likely in my mind. The dystopia, sadly, is not the result of artificial intelligence because, as you would agree with me, intelligence is an energy that has no polarity. If you use it for good, it delivers good. If you use it for bad, it delivers evil. The challenge we have is that the early uses of AI are going to be serving and magnifying a system that humanity has already built that benefits very few at the expense of the majority. Concentration of power or polarity of economics, or the trend we've seen with social media leading to loneliness and separation, the gap between Africa and the rest of the world, if we don't catch up. All of those are going to be magnified massively in the next 10 to 12 years. We really have to wake up and be presented in an AI that is culturally sensitive, language sensitive, knowledge sensitive, tradition sensitive to Africa. And as we do, sadly, I believe we have to try and shorten that dystopia by asking everyone to make sure that AI is on our side, even as bad actors try to make it benefit them at our expense.
I hope you are doing well and are having a meaningful day. Welcome to another episode of the Why Lead podcast in collaboration with Wongozi Institute, who have allowed us to have this conversation in this beautiful resource center, and Vodacom's Future Ready Summit. I'm your host, Ben Oden. Now, imagine waking up to a world where machines hold the highest IQ and wealth shifts overnight. Are you ready for that world? Do you feel uneasy knowing today's AI simply mirrors our flawed ethics? Africa is sprinting to catch up with the AI race, yet countries like the US and China are already planting their flags on the digital soil. What steps can we take right now to ensure our startups, governments, and communities own the ground, not just rent it? And so to explore all of these questions, I am joined by a tech visionary turned happiness evangelist. After 3 decades in Silicon Valley, most recently as chief business officer at Google X, he pivoted to make joy his life's work. He's a 4-time best-selling author, having written books like Solve for Happy, Scary Smart, The Little Voice in Your Head, and Unstressable. Host of a top mental health podcast, Slow Mo, founder of 1 Billion Happy, co-founder of Unstressable, and chief AI officer at Flight Story. Driven by personal tragedy and an engineer's curiosity, he combines hard-won insights and deep conversations to explore how we can all learn, share, and live happier, more meaningful lives. Ladies and gentlemen, Mo Gawdat. Mo, you're most welcome.
What a generous introduction. Thank you.
Your first book is about happiness. And I believe in many ways, and this could be an assumption on my part, happiness is at the core of what drives you and how you hope to influence the world. Commitments like helping 1 billion people become happier support this, I guess, assumption on my part. Even when you speak about the utopia, so to speak, that AI can usher us into, following this dystopian that maybe is going to be in the immediate short term, happiness is still a desired fabric of that reality. What makes happiness a superior, or maybe dare I say, ultimate metric for human flourishing for you? And what do you think, what do you think is the reason why a lot of people, it's much easier to be driven by this desire to flee suffering rather than the intentionality to actively take steps towards becoming happy? Because you can flee suffering but never really truly become happy. Yeah.
Wow, that's a multi-layered question. I would start by saying yes, absolutely, it is the mission of the rest of my life. I'm hoping that by the end of my life, I would spend everything I've earned in my Google years on 1 billion happy, and hopefully deliver at least a path to 1 billion happy, and then be forgotten. That would be an amazing outcome. I think most of my work, if you follow the trajectory, is it started with an explanation, an engineering approach to happiness and solve for happy. Then it started to address the biggest reasons for unhappiness. And I'll continue to do that for as long as I can. One of which was artificial intelligence, which most people think is an odd addition to my collection of work. But it, as AI magnifies humanity, then if we're unhappy, it will make us miserable. And so, it is quite interesting because you correctly point that avoiding suffering does not reflect happiness. By definition, our world, I think, is more and more designed for unhappiness, if you want. Life in general requires us to persevere and, try hard. And sometimes there will be obstacles on our way, and sometimes times will be unpredictable and so on. But believe it or not, none of that actually is a prerequisite to unhappiness. You could simply be in the most difficult place on earth and still find that peaceful contentment that you're okay with life as it is. And that's simply, if you want the simplest examples, rain never really makes you happy or unhappy. Rain makes you happy if it's your ex-girlfriend's wedding, right? It makes you unhappy if you want to sit in the sun. Right? There's no inherent happiness in anything. And accordingly, nothing really has the power to make you happy or unhappy. Although in the modern world, we try to sell you happiness through things and acquisitions and, ego and positioning in society and so on, which are all fleeting and accordingly consistently causing more unhappiness. If you think about it, the rain example, happiness is not the result of what life gives you, but it's the result of how you think about what life gives you. And so if you compare what life gives you to your expectations of how you want life to be, and life falls short, you're unhappy, right? If you wanted rain and life gave you rain, you're happy. If you wanted rain and life didn't give you rain, you're unhappy. And so when you really think about it, it's mathematical. It's almost algorithmic. Your happiness is equal to or greater than the difference between your expectation, your perception of how life is, and your expectations and hopes and wishes of how life should be. And when you really look at those two, you realize that your expectations are set within your head, and your perception of your life is set within your head. It's entirely inside your head. Right? You could be stuck in traffic telling yourself that my expectation is that I should be there in 10 minutes and now it's going to be 15 and be miserable for it. Or you could be stuck in traffic and telling yourself, oh my God, I am in a car. Which most people don't take for granted. I am in, I have someone waiting for me on the other side. I'm safe. There are no bombs landing on my head. My family is safe. I can afford to be 5 minutes late by texting someone because I have an amazing communication device that says, I'm really sorry, I'm stuck in traffic. And if you see it that way, you're not unhappy at all. As a matter of fact, you're completely contented with the situation. And you can even become happy by just playing some music for the extra 5 minutes. And that's a choice. And I think what I'm advocating to the world is that we've been making quite a few wrong choices that we should change.
I like that because it sounds like the journey to become happier is basically going small rather than going big.
I believe that.
Yeah, focusing on the here and now rather than constantly fixated on what's next.
I believe that one of my very, very deliberate practices is to minimize. I mean, you can see I'm always in a black t-shirt and a pair of jeans, which makes my life so much simpler. It also means that I don't have to really be concerned about what people think of what I wear. It's nice, it's clean, it's comfortable. It's not disrespectful. There is nothing you can really read in it. But I do that with everything in my life. So I attempt to take 10 items out of my home every Saturday and hand them out to charity or get rid of them if they're not charity worthy. And you'll be amazed at how much happiness comes from less. From no clutter, from not having to worry about things that are weighing you down.
Wow, beautiful. Now, I like the connection you made there between happiness and AI, because I think if you ask the majority of people who are maybe trying to adapt to AI, the idea of AI is connected a lot to productivity. It's here to simplify, it's here to make us produce more, get more done. But I love this connection to happiness. And I think something that I was curious about, leading up to this conversation, is that throughout most of human history, we've essentially built and designed our lives in the analog world. Right? And so the earth is sort of a substrate that we've built our life upon. But, having dived into your work, you don't really see AI as an extension, something that comes to maybe make improvements in our lives. Rather, it will become a form of a substrate that we build our lives upon. And I think if things do play out that way, then life will be very, very differently. And so let's scenario play and assume that's how everything is going to play out, where the digital world will not just be something that improves our lives, but it will be an earth of its own that we build our lives upon. How do we, as we maybe navigate and transition to that world, how do we make sure that the world doesn't become Orwellian, so to speak, here, and we retain some of the best aspects of our world as we know it?
Wow. Unfortunately, it will become Orwellian. My post before last, my current book is called Alive, and I post it weekly in 5 pages on my Substack, and it is. My last post was called Our 1984, and in a very interesting way, I am, most people who speak about artificial intelligence will cite what we normally refer to as a singularity, a level of uncertainty, because the massive advancement of AI is something that's never happened before in human history. Sort of the rules of the game change so much. Think about it. Africa, with organizations like Vodacom, for example, is not a mile away from the advancements of the rest of the world. You still have access to information, you still have access to communication, you still have access to a proper infrastructure, and so on and so forth. If one of the big players of AI, China or America, wins big, the gap between the smartest African, say at 200 IQ points, and the smartest person who owns that technology might be thousands, tens of thousands of IQ points, because you're augmenting a human intelligence with a machine that is capable of so much more intelligence. And so that landscape is very, very uncharted. We can't even imagine properly. Anyone that tells you we understand that future is arrogant. And I don't claim to. I just share my points of view so that people reflect. My view, sadly, is that we will go through a dystopia before we go to a utopia. And both are almost 100% likely in my mind. The dystopia, sadly, is not the result of artificial intelligence, because, as you would agree with me, intelligence is an energy that has no polarity. If you use it for good, it delivers good. If you use it for bad, it delivers evil, right? The challenge we have is that the early uses of AI are going to be serving and magnifying a system that humanity has already built that benefits very few at the expense of the majority. And that system, in terms of concentration of power or polarity of economics or, the trend we've seen with social media leading to loneliness and separation, all of those are going to be magnified massively in the next 10 to 12 years. Another interesting trend is the gap between Africa and the rest of the world. If we don't catch up, you have to understand that, sadly, language models that most of us use today are more Californian than they are Middle Eastern or African or German even. They basically hang on to a view of the world that requires you to be very clever as you prompt them so that they give up on. Their initial response will sound exactly like a Californian, hired journalist would sound. And so we really have to wake up and be presented in an AI that is culturally sensitive, language sensitive, knowledge sensitive, tradition sensitive to Africa. And as we do, sadly, I believe we have to try and shorten that dystopia by asking everyone to make sure that AI is on our side, even as bad actors try to make it benefit them at our expense.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought the conversation towards this direction because, looking at FACERIP, right, which is an acronym for freedom, accountability, connectedness, economics, reality, innovation, and power, and which are the 6 domains under AI's onslaught. So, you talk about redefining these domains, and I'd like to zoom in on power, which you've just highlighted right now, redefining power, right? Because there's a changing landscape of what it means to be powerful. And you say, the people building platform AIs will own the digital soil, comparing the digital soil to actual physical land and how it has represented powerful millenniums, which will allow them to amass an unimaginable amount of wealth in a short time. Now, recently we know the US owns a big chunk of that soil. China also made a move to own a big chunk of that soil. But, Africa, like you're saying, Middle East, we're sort of lagging behind on this. And so turning to Africa specifically, what concrete steps can African governments, startups, or communities take right now to ensure that we don't just become tenants in this digital soil, but owners so that we capture the value and the opportunity that comes with this new form of power?
It's an incredible question. So, America's approach and China's approach are very different. You have to be aware of that. So China is very pro open source, and some of the tech that comes out of China, whether DeepSeek or Manus and so on, are superior in so many ways. And I think this Cold War, if you want, will continue. Now, the game is very straightforward. Sadly, power has always aggregated to the top, right? So the landlord, by definition of the name, is a lord that applied, feudalism to the peasants, not even tenants. And of course, the digital soil of the future is going to be artificial intelligence and robotics. And so those who own that power will have enormous power. But this is the first time in history where we have a dichotomy, an arbitrage, if you want, because at the same time that power will be concentrated at the top for the platform owners, there is a massive democracy of power. You could see that in its extreme with something like the Houthis being able to use a drone that is $3,000 worth to knock an F-16 off a U.S. military ship in the Red Sea, right? So they can use a $3 thing to affect a $160 million thing, right? And I think the idea here is that because of that amazing access to intelligence because of some of the work that's happening, whether by China or some of the American players around open source, because of the edge platforms that are starting to happen where AI now can run on your phone. It can run on a very, very small footprint on an old computer. Right? By becoming aware of that, I think we can invent and innovate in Africa as much as anywhere else in the world. Right? And I think the reality is that the disruption, like any other technology we've seen before, just 10 times faster, that can happen because of that, it would take something like the internet revolution, which was incredibly fast in pace, and multiply that by 100x speed. The thing to be aware of, though, is that because it's at 100x speed, every day that we lose is equivalent to a year of the internet era, right? And so accordingly, we need to really jump in and get those technologies. Download DeepSeek on your computer and learn, right? I am an author, so my current book, I don't claim to compete with the world of AI. I'm writing it with an AI. So we're co-authors in it. I'm not asking the AI questions and copying and pasting. I'm actually asking the AI questions and we're debating them as two intelligent beings discussing it at the same time. And I think that's the idea. The idea is that this revolution is here. There is a massive democracy of access to power, if you want. So use it.
And I'm glad that you brought up this new book because, as we're winding down our conversation, the last question that I wanted to ask you is, speaking of this upcoming book, Alive, and this specific choice that you made to collaborate not just with an AI, but with an audience that got an advanced copy of your book and the debate that happens. Because I think this experiment, at least in my observation, it changes a few things because authors and thinkers were seen as originators of ideas, but this more collaborative approach shifts the identity to curation and synthesis, so to speak. So what makes this next book important, and especially the choices you've made in how it's produced?
Oh, thank you for bringing this up. This is very dear to my heart. You see, I started the conversation by saying anyone who claims to know what's about to happen is arrogant, and I don't, right? But it is so important that we discuss this. That I believe I have to say what I believe and hope that others will contribute. And this model where I have conversations with AI works both ways. It informs me, but it also informs the AI about humanity's views on this. It informs the AI about our concern, right? And having, we're now around 5,000 readers reviewing this is a scary experiment for an author, because believe it or not, when I write something on a paperback and give it to you and you don't like it, I don't get intimidated all the time. I don't get shocked all the time by some of the views that completely contradict my view. But in this experiment, I am actually accepting that shock to my confidence, if you want, because the inputs that come in from the readers are really extremely valuable in shaping the thinking around this. And so on Substack, basically, I have 5,000 followers that read almost 2/3 of every post. I try to, sometimes more and sometimes less, but for publishing reasons, unfortunately, I cannot give them access for free to the whole text. But basically, that experiment then makes the views of our AI future sort of guided by me, but really decided by the AI and the readers. And I really think beyond being a very interesting way to write, putting yourself out there while you're writing, I think it's a very interesting experiment of how our future should look like, where it's the people and the AI that are consulted on a future that works for all of us. And hopefully the governments and the corporations would then listen to us and say, we get it, this is what you want, this is what we're going to deliver.
Thank you so much for that. And I love that, the mutuality of influence that we share with AI. And so if we want it to mirror our world, we have to present the best side of the humanity. And so
the AI will learn from us. I call it raising Superman. Okay? It's not the code that we write that teaches AI, it's the data that is fed to them. And the analogy I always give is, this alien being that arrives to planet Earth with superpowers, that alien being doesn't become Superman because of the superpowers. The child becomes Superman because the parents that adopted the child taught it to protect and serve. Right? If they taught it to steal banks and make them richer, they would be, the child would become a supervillain. And I think it's up to every one of us to become that parent, to show AI that we care, that, this mindset of scarcity that built capitalism, where a few are trying to accumulate all of the wealth and power, is not needed anymore, because in just a few years, the breakthrough of intelligence will enable us to create anything. Literally anything out of thin air, right? Because most of the challenges that humanity faces today are just a limitation on intelligence. Give me enough intelligence and I'll solve climate change. It's really not that complicated. And it might be something that is much simpler than we think. It might not be electric cars. It might be a specific bacteria that we launch at a specific trajectory through physics, at a, and our understanding of chemistry that would hit something at a certain point in time and consume CO2. Right? It could be a better understanding of biology and taking photosynthesis and multiplying it through a different way. And all of that can be served with intelligence. And we're on that cusp of becoming so intelligent by augmenting our intelligence with the machines that we can get there. So I don't understand, if we can create this incredible utopia of abundance, why does it really matter if someone has 2 Ferraris when none of us need a Ferrari at all? And I think that's the mindset change that needs to happen. There's absolutely nothing wrong with AI. There is a lot wrong with our value set, what we built the human system on in the age of the rise of the machines.
Wow, I love this conversation, and I could talk for the next 2 hours, but we have come to the end of this brief conversation that we had, and thank you so much for your insights. And I would encourage all the viewers and the listeners to go purchase any one of the 4 books. You'll learn a lot about how to be happier, but also how to adapt and be a part of this AI revolution that's taking over the world. Thank you so much, Mo Gawdat, for this opportunity to talk with you. And now to our dear listeners, have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.